Museums have the power and sometimes the obligation to preserve and shape the stories that define us. That job has gotten far more complicated in the DEI backlash era as elected officials try to reshape and sometimes whitewash those stories. Here to discuss how his museum is responding to those challenges is Dr. Russ Wigginton. He's the president of the National Civil Rights Museum, and he's speaking tonight at the Cummer Museum of Art and Gardens. Dr. Wigginton, thank you so much for being here.
It's my pleasure to be here with you all.
So, first of all, for people who have not been there, tell us a little bit about the Civil Rights Museum. It is in Memphis, and the location is actually at the Lorraine
It is
Motel.
at the Lorraine Motel, and the Lorraine Motel is the place where Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated on April 4, 1968. And after that event, as you might imagine, the city, the country, was in disarray to some extent, and the motel fell into disrepair. About 20 years later, it fell into disrepair for that period of time. Three local business leaders led the charge to make sure that place remained and established a fund to save the Lorraine, and the National Civil Rights Museum is the byproduct of that. It was founded in 1991, and so we're celebrating our 35-year anniversary this year, and it has become it is the oldest civil rights museum in the country where a particular event happened, and we have served in that 35 years more than 6 million visitors, and we get about 250,000 visitors a year from all over the world.
Well, congrats on the anniversary. First of all, that's quite a milestone. It is as you say, it is a place that was established around an event, a very tragic event. Is it a painful pilgrimage for people? Is it a difficult location to celebrate the life of Dr. King and the civil rights movement, given what happened there?
That's a great question. It is a place where a range of emotions are felt. The museum, our mission is to honor Dr. King's legacy, but it is a comprehensive museum that focuses on the experience of African Americans. But it is without question and the trials and tribulations of the American experiment is what we like to say. And so our goal is to have people, what I describe as have a head and heart collision. That means they intellectually learned about a tremendous amount of comprehensive experiences over since the founding of our country. But they also have moments where they see spots that touch their hearts. And by touching their heart, that can be mad, sad, glad, any range of emotions. So it is a comprehensive experience. We also have the Legacy Building, which is the building across the street from the Lorraine where the alleged shot was fired. And we have been renovating that building for the last 2.5 years. It reopens in middle May, and that will pick up from 1968 to the present. So the civil and human rights story continued certainly after 1968, and we are going to tell that story as well.
I want to ask you more about that, but at first I'd just like to learn a little bit about you and your own path to this work. You were born in Louisville, and your parents were both civil rights activists. Your mom in particular, can you tell us about what she did? Because there's something that's on exhibit at the museum that I think is evocative of what she did.
Sure. She was, as John Lewis would say, she was in that group of people who got into good trouble. As a very young adult, she was arrested desegregating lunch counters in Louisville, Kentucky. And my father is a Howard University graduate, and he was there in the early to mid 60s, and his suite mate was Stokely Carmichael. So both of my parents were deeply engaged in the heart of the movement, which was led by young people.
And so folks who are watching our live stream can look at an image of you that you're sitting at a display that is sort of a mock-up of a lunch counter. Tell us what people experience when they sit there? I mean, in this picture, you're sitting there and posing for a photograph, but what does that display mean to people?
Well, it's actually not everybody who sits at that counter has a bow tie on either. So I will say uh, it's actually a spot that does draw a lot of people, because in the background are clips and images from desegregation happening at lunch counters all over the South in the early 1960s. And those were traumatic and sometimes violent moments. But the power of that exhibit is that people like James Lawson, we show them leading nonviolent civil disobedience trainings for the college students who were about to sit at those lunch counters and have drinks poured on them, be called out of their names, etc., and oftentimes being taken off of those seats and put in the paddy wagons and taken to jail like my mom was. But in the spirit of nonviolence, it was a powerful and strategic move in order to change society.
Those just demonstrations and the work that Dr. King did, we often talk about the nonviolent part of it. It wasn't a nonviolent event in many cases. It just was nonviolent on one side. And there was a lot of violence directed at those protesters.
Absolutely. And it speaks to him as a human and the growth he had throughout his career. We try to make sure that all of our visitors, our experience is grounded in facts and data at the National Civil Rights Museum. And all of our visitors, we want them to get the full experience of how people are and were. And the underneath what we want to do is make sure people see themselves. And so we have a saying that the movement was led by ordinary people doing extraordinary things. The overwhelming majority of people involved in the movement were not Dr. King-like, but they gleaned from his leadership and his inspiration. But he had a learning curve as well. It took people like James Lawson and Bayard Rustin, when he went to Birmingham, when he was in Montgomery, to understand that there might be another way other than the gun-toting Dr. King, which he was. So Bayard Rustin and James Lawson introduced him to the nonviolent philosophy, because when his house was bombed in Montgomery, he had guns in the house and he was ready to defend his family. Wow. People don't talk enough about that aspect of Martin Luther King Jr., but it is important, because we need to see how he grew as a leader. And frankly, I think that gives us all a chance to figure out how we can be our best selves as well.
And also evolve on the issue of how to respond. If you're just joining us, we are talking to Dr. Russ Wigginton. He is the president of the National Civil Rights Museum. He's speaking tonight at the Cummer Museum. If you'd like to join our conversation, you can call us on air at 904-549-2937, or you can go to firstcoastconnect.org and find all the ways to connect with us. In terms of your own path to this position at the National Civil Rights Museum, there is a connection that you have through your great-grandfather. And I wonder if you'd tell us a little bit about it, because his role working for the railroad has a local connection in terms of the work of porters, red caps as they're called. Jacksonville, of course, had a union of Pullman porters, red caps, and they were our first major league team in Florida, the Negro League red caps. So I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about your great-grandfather and then your father and sort of the role of the railroad.
Sure. My great-grandfather was indeed a red cap for 50 years for the Louisville and Nashville Railroad. And he was a interesting character in Louisville, Kentucky. At a time where seeing older black men toting bags at the railroad station was a common occurrence, they were often overlooked for their intellect and leadership, and dare I say, wage earning in those opportunities. He was the sole provider in that household. My great grandmother never worked outside of the house. They lived a middle class lifestyle for a black family at that time. He was able to send all of his children to college, and he was a well respected, civically engaged person in Louisville. And I had the pleasure of knowing him, and I was fascinated by him. I was so fascinated by him that I did a dissertation on black railroad workers in Louisville, Kentucky, their at work and away from work lives, very much modeled after him. There was a tremendous number of these very important people in the black community throughout the country. Certainly through the leadership of one A. Philip Randolph from here, who guided the effort to be recognized. That role propelled, ironically, my father, so his grandson, to be a Howard University graduate and then be one of the first African Americans to attain management level position for the Louisville and Nashville Railroad. And so we have a long history with the L&N, which merged with CSX, which you all are familiar with here. And to me, the importance was just that connection of family, community, work ethic, and important place in society. So I feel tremendously fortunate to come from that lineage.
Let's talk a little bit about the current challenges, not just for your museum, but for all kinds of museums, as we've seen, certainly at the federal government level, but here in Florida, there's been pushback as well in this kind of post-DEI era, in some ways, leaders who are uncomfortable with some of the stories that Black history is based on, uncomfortable with stories that make people uncomfortable with stories that focus on a particular race or gender, perhaps at the exclusion of others. And how has that changed your job?
It has not changed my job. It actually has made made my job much more, I would say, important, and allowed, frankly, the opportunity for us to do our work to a broader audience. Quite honestly, part of the you used the word uncomfortable several times, and I like to think about how the beauty of people being uncomfortable together. When we talk about topics like slavery, for example, I think there's an assumption that that's a comfortable topic for most Black people to talk about. I frankly, as a college professor, never had any student across racial, demographic, socioeconomic, religious lines, any of those points of discrepancy. The one commonality is that they were all uncomfortable talking about it. And I believe we should be uncomfortable together and talk about these topics, because the reality of it is, when you're talking about slavery, everybody's uncomfortable. Nobody here is responsible for it. So why are we uncomfortable talking about our past? We talk about our past in other dimensions. Let's talk about, solve for this collective discomfort, because I am convinced that we will continue to struggle to get on the other side of that discomfort if we just continue to kick the can down the road. I don't think it's possible to have had a 250-year critical component of our existence as a country and think that we can talk about it in small and comfortable snippets. So let's get with it, folks. Let's have the conversation. Let's do it with civility. Let's do it with decency and respect. And let's do it together.
We are continuing our conversation with Dr. Russ Wigginton. He is the president of the National Civil Rights Museum, and he's here in town speaking tonight at the Cummer. We're going to continue our conversation about challenges the museum faces, but we do have a call I'd like to take. Curtis on the north side. Good morning, Curtis. Go ahead.
And my sister, good morning. My brother, it's so good that you are here with us today. Sir, I would just like to compliment you on the fact of you bringing out so much. Like there are multiple sit-ins, lunch counter sit-ins that went on across this country. So many other actions that people don't even have a clue because we are given so much of a generic view of our history. Our history is so broad, and it's more importantly that we didn't do it by ourselves. There were all kind of people, male, white, Hispanic, female, gays, that contributed to our struggle. And I don't think enough of that is being presented to the world. I think that would bring us more together. Thank you so much. And I plan on seeing you tonight. Thank you, brother.
Thanks so much for the call, Curtis. Um, Providing that information is, there's challenges increasingly. And we were talking even during the break about some museums that have seen a real pushback, particularly the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C., as an institution across the board, but it's African American Museum, the displays there. This president has objected to some of those displays and again, the content. How does that impact other museums? How does it impact the world of donors? How does it impact your own museum if it does?
That's a great question, and it is a real issue. And the museum world is pretty small, so we all are in community in a certain kind of way, and talk amongst ourselves a lot. And I feel, given the place that I work, I feel a certain responsibility. We have a certain responsibility to use our voices in the way that Dr. King would have when you see injustice. And we have spoken loudly and proudly about the importance of museums being able to ground themselves in facts and data and present stories for people to be aware of and experience, and the nuances of and the complexities of life. And we have done that, and we will continue to do that. We also have the benefit, frankly, of not having a line item in our budget for federal funding. And because of that, I am fortunate to have to go get my own money and raise my money and be unapologetic about what we are doing. And that's the privilege of doing that allows us to put one foot in front of the other and continue to be led by facts and data and speak truth to power when deemed necessary. The reality of it is, if you think about the initiative to strip away the telling of stories, it just is a reinforcement of how important those stories are. Much like why there was such deep resistance during the heart of the civil rights movement of voting, the power of voting. Back in slavery, the power of reading, right? So when things are legally and through violence and intimidation attempts to control, it tells you a lot about what's really important. So the ability to be literate, the ability to vote, and dare I say today, the ability to tell the truth about all dimensions of our nation's history tell us a lot about what we should be focused on, about what's important. So we will continue to do that. We will do that for the places who cannot do that. And that's a responsibility that comes with being the place where Dr. King lost his life.
And just briefly, because we only have a few seconds left, but how do you get people to see themselves as part of what comes next? You mentioned everyday people doing extraordinary things. MLK was a 39-year-old dad. He ended up trying to change the world. How do you get people to think that they can have that kind of impact?
Well, we just completed a $40 million renovation to our legacy building, which picks up from 1968 to the present. And very intentionally in that space is laying out many more acts of civil and human rights work that have happened in the last 50 years. The young people of today are the people who are going to have to lead this movement, and they need to understand and see themselves in the movement before they are going to embrace and adopt the stories of the traditional civil rights movement. So telling the stories in ways that connect with all people is fundamental to doing the work in the future.
Well, we appreciate the work that you are doing, Dr. Russ Wigginton. He is speaking tonight at 6:30 at the museum, the Cummer Museum of Art and Gardens, and registration is required. It is a pleasure to meet you, Dr. Wigginton. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.